Arizona Mexican Mafia doesn't run street corners. They run prisons. Lawyers arrested inside courtrooms. Witnesses murdered before trial. The U.S. Department of Justice relocated an entire death penalty case to a different state because this organization made staying too dangerous. Every single one of them thought they were untouchable. Every single one of them was wrong. 10 names. Here's what the road actually costs. If this reaches one kid before they make that choice, it's worth it. Hit like, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you're on your phone, hit hype. That button only works on mobile. Let's get into it. Number 10. Timothy Moses Bernal. On a February night in 2023, a 25-year-old musician named Austin Mole showed up near 19th Street and Camelback Road in Phoenix to close a gun deal. Austin never made it home. Timothy did. Austin went by Prince Aslan. He made beats. Timothy made different choices. When the deal went wrong, Timothy shot him. Then he drove Austin's body south across the city, tied 2 cinder blocks to it, and dropped everything into a canal near 16th Street and Baseline Road. Austin stayed down there for over a month before anyone found him. Timothy was 25. He was also on probation for a 2015 aggravated assault charge, the kind of charge that gets you supervised, not imprisoned. So while he was checking in with his probation officer every few weeks, he was running illegal gun deals on the side. The system never caught the gap. 3 months later, he killed again. The target was Chad Munoz, a former Arizona Mexican Mafia member the organization had quietly marked for death after he broke their rules. Timothy wasn't ordered to do it. He volunteered. Killing Munoz was his job application. He shot Munoz. Then he sat back and told the other people in the room to handle the body and get rid of the car. Someone else did the scrubbing. Timothy gave directions. He wasn't even officially in the gang yet, but he was already running the cleanup like he owned the place. Investigators cracked both cases while digging into Munoz's death. The people Timothy had ordered to clean up the scene started talking. Phone records filled in the rest. He took a plea. 2 first-degree murders, plus the probation violation. The judge gave him 48.75 years. Timothy was 27 when he sat down to hear that number. What happened next is the part nobody announces out loud. Timothy walked into an Arizona state prison carrying 2 confirmed kills. One of them, a gang-sanctioned hit. The men already inside knew exactly what that meant. He did not walk in as an inmate looking for protection. He walked in already paid up. But the man sitting at number 9? He didn't wait until he was inside to prove himself. He did it in front of a sergeant in broad daylight, and then told the officers exactly what he'd done. Number 9. Santiago Sanchez. On September 7, 2016, inside Pinal County Jail in Florence, Arizona, Lieutenant Sergio Antolin walked into a housing pod to do a routine head count. He had worked there for 6 years. He knew the inmates by name. Some of them knew him well enough to smile and say good morning. One of them was Santiago Sanchez. Sanchez was 26 and already serving 38 years for a drive-by shooting in Bullhead City back in 2008. That case also tied him to the murder of Jaime Ramos Banuelos, a man found shot multiple times on a dirt road 4 miles outside of town. Banuelos was last seen talking to Sanchez at 11 p.m. the night before. No conviction came from it. Sanchez went to prison anyway, and that's where the Arizona Mexican Mafia found him. Antolin's job inside the jail was to gather intelligence on gang activity. That made him a problem worth solving. Weeks before September 7th, Sanchez and his cellmates had been breaking off small pieces of metal from their bed frames and filing them down with hidden sandpaper. The sandpaper was found afterward. So were the gaps in the frames. Nobody noticed while it was happening. That afternoon, Antolin entered the pod with a sergeant. An inmate at the table looked up and said, "The lieutenant is in the pod." Sanchez and Robert Villalobos pulled out their shanks. Mauricio Moraga stepped directly in front of the sergeant, dropped into a fighting stance, and kept him there while Antolin was stabbed 20 times in the torso. Each man had one job. All 3 did theirs. Antolin was airlifted out. He survived, but never returned to work. When officers grabbed Sanchez, He didn't ask for a lawyer. He said, "I had killed the lieutenant." Present tense would have been more accurate, but the point came through. In November 2017, all 3 men were convicted on 14 counts. Sanchez got life plus 106 consecutive years. His appeal in 2018 was denied on every point. He walked into that courtroom thinking he'd proven something. He walked out with a sentence so long the math stops mattering. Life plus 106 years for stabbing a man who used to say good morning to him. Number 8. Lino Rocha Flores. On October 15, 1981, inside the maximum security exercise pen at Arizona State Prison, a man named Lino Flores walked up behind another inmate, wrapped his arms around him, and held him perfectly still, while his partner, Manuel, stabbed the man repeatedly with a homemade knife. Flores did not do the stabbing, and that distinction tells you something about who he was. His job was to hold the body in place so Luchan could work. It takes a very specific kind of person to stand there, with their arms locked around a struggling man, and not let go while a knife goes in. Flores was that kind of person. He had apparently found his calling. When they went to trial in June 1982, Flores took the stand and explained himself. He told the jury he had to hold the victim down, because if he didn't, Luchan might turn on him instead. Under cross-examination, he admitted the rule came from the Mexican Mafia. The jury convicted him anyway. Life plus 5 years. January 3rd, 1984. Same prison, different yard, different victim. This time the man's name was Don Abeta, and this time Flores brought help. He and Pete Moreno held Abeta down together, while Robert Jaramillo did the stabbing. 3 wounds. Abeta died. The state charged all 3 with first-degree murder and put the death penalty on the table. They took a plea deal instead. Another life sentence for Flores, stacked on top of the first. By 2008, he was at ASPC Iman, filing a legal appeal on his own, without a lawyer. The court record shows he could not pay the $5 filing fee. The man who had spent nearly 3 decades doing the gang's most violent work did not have $5 in his account. On August 16, 2014, an inmate named Julio Salazar attacked Flores inside the basketball enclosure at ASPC Iman. The attack lasted 47 minutes. No guard came. When it was over, the medical examiner noted a crushed skull and a fractured larynx. The larynx being the part of your throat that lets you call for help. Salazar was sentenced to death in August 2022. Number 7 never touched anyone. He didn't have to. He just gave an order. And 8 people disappeared before the trial even started. Number 7. David Huato head Gano. In the early 2000s, inside the Arizona State Prison system, a man named David Gano made a decision that signed his own death warrant. He decided to talk to the government. David went by Huato head inside. The name came from Guanajuato, a state in central Mexico. In prison, your nickname is your identity. It tells people who you are, where you come from, and who you answer to. Huato head answered to the New Mexican Mafia, a gang run by a man named Paul Eppinger. At some point, David started cooperating with law enforcement. He gave information. He became a witness. Inside a prison, there is no such thing as a quiet secret. The gang found out. Eppinger gave the order. Federal prosecutors later charged it as obstruction of justice. Case number CR 03730PHXROS, if you want to look it up. David Gano was murdered. He wasn't the only one. Prosecutors documented 8 government witnesses who were killed. Thomas James, Raul Sanchez, Benny Hernandez, Carol Romero, Jose Moreno Sr., Jose Moreno Jr. 8 people who talked and then died for it. The killings got so bad that U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft personally moved the entire trial from Santa Fe to Phoenix. The judge sat behind bulletproof glass. The lead detective, Mike Maya, survived an assassination plot run from inside prison walls. The prosecutors started carrying guns to work. Think about that. The lawyers were afraid to show up to their own case. David Gano bet his life on the idea that the government could protect him. He lost that bet before the trial even started. His murder became one of the key exhibits prosecutors used to argue Paul Eppinger deserved the death penalty, a legal argument built on the idea that some people are simply too dangerous to ever be free again. Eppinger never held the knife. He never had to. He didn't get justice. He became proof that justice was needed. Number 6. Sidney "Sid" Vicious Cisneros. In 2019, the Arizona Court of Appeals was reviewing the case of a man who had spent years making other inmates afraid to walk to the shower. His name was Sidney Cisneros. Everyone inside called him Sid Vicious. The name came from the Sex Pistols bassist, a man famous for heroin, chaos, and allegedly stabbing his own girlfriend. Whether Cisneros picked that name himself or whether it was given to him, the fit was accurate enough that nobody pushed back on it. Cisneros was an enforcer for the Arizona Mexican Mafia. That meant when the organization decided someone needed to be punished, he was the one who showed up. But what separated Cisneros from a regular violent criminal was the deliberateness of it. He did not just hurt people. He hurt them in ways that left a visible record, on their face, on their body, so that every other inmate who saw them afterward understood exactly what had happened, and exactly who had done it. The violence was the message. Inside maximum security, there are no firearms. Weapons come from whatever is available. A toothbrush handle sharpened against concrete. A strip of metal pulled from a bed frame. Cisneros worked in that environment for years. The legal record reflects multiple serious violent offense convictions, each with its own sentence, all of them running consecutively, which is what brought everyone to 2019. His lawyers argued that Juror 48, seated during his original trial, had been biased. Given the circumstances, an ordinary citizen sitting 10 feet from Sidney Cisneros, knowing his name, knowing his record, the argument was not unreasonable. Fear is a real thing. It affects judgment. The problem was simpler than anyone wanted to admit. During jury selection, his legal team had the opportunity to remove Juror 48 using a peremptory strike. A removal that requires no explanation, no argument, no proof of anything. They didn't use it. They used their strikes elsewhere, let Juror 48 stay, and then, after losing, tried to raise the issue on appeal. Arizona case law, specifically State v. Rubio from 2008, has a rule for exactly this situation. It is called cure or waive. If you see a problem and have the tool to fix it, you fix it then. You do not save it for later. Judge Campbell upheld every conviction. Every sentence stood. The most feared man in the Arizona prison system lost his appeal because his lawyers forgot to check a box. The sentences stayed. He went back inside. Number 5. Manuel "Gallo" Garcia. On July 8, 2021, a USPS worker at a postal facility in Forest Park, Illinois pulled a package off the conveyor belt. Inside, 1 pound of crystal meth and 1,000 fentanyl pills. The sender wasn't some street dealer. He was a 42-year-old man sitting in a prison cell in Arizona. His name is Manuel Garcia. In the Arizona Mexican Mafia, they called him Gallo. In federal court documents, he goes by Chuy. He had been locked up inside the Arizona Department of Corrections since 2010. 11 years behind bars, and he was still running drug shipments to Illinois. Here's the part that matters. He did all of this from his cell using a smuggled smartphone. Garcia didn't meet suppliers in parking lots. He didn't drive across state lines. He opened a video call, held the product up to the camera so the buyer could see the quality, and closed the deal. His phone was doing work that used to require an entire crew. 6 days after that package was intercepted, on July 14th, one of Garcia's people showed up at O'Hare International Airport, not to catch a flight. He walked into the parking lot and collected $11,100 in cash from the buyer. The drugs were already in federal custody. Garcia's guy picked up the money anyway, because nobody told him the shipment was gone. 1,000 fentanyl pills. The DEA says 2 milligrams of fentanyl is enough to kill an adult. Do the math yourself. Garcia had been inside since 2010. Concrete walls, guards, cameras, everything designed to cut a person off from the outside world. He still got a smartphone into his cell, built a supply line across 2 state lines, and collected payment at one of the busiest airports in the country, all without leaving his prison uniform. The Arizona Department of Corrections eventually moved him to Florence State Prison. Different facility, same phone signal. Nobody who knew Garcia back in 2010 would have called him a tech guy. But somewhere between year 1 and year 11 of his sentence, he figured something out. You don't need to be on the street to own it. Number 4, had no phone, no network, no supply chain. He had something the organization valued more than all of that. A man with nothing left to lose, and 2 life sentences already on the books. Number 4, Raymond Oso Montaño. On August 10, 2009, inside Cell 2A12 at the Cimarron unit of ASPC Tucson, Arizona, a man named Pete Caleros was strangled to death by his own cellmate. No weapon, no knife, just hands. Raymond Montaño had been inside long enough to know that a knife leaves blood, and blood leaves evidence. Bare hands leave nothing but a dead man. He had already been serving 2 life sentences for armed robbery when he killed Caleros, which means the state of Arizona had essentially run out of ways to punish him. The Mexican Mafia understood that. They filed that information away and used it. Caleros had been marked for death before he ever set foot in Cimarron. At his previous facility, Buckley, he had backed down from a job the gang gave him. That kind of thing doesn't get forgotten inside. It gets transferred. When Caleros moved to Cimarron, the order came with him. Montaño ended up as his cellmate in 2A12. Nobody on record can explain exactly how that happened. The killing was quiet and organized. Luis Gonzalez pinned Caleros to the bunk. Montaño choked him until he stopped moving. 2 cells over, Joseph Acedo and Richard Robles had hung towels over their door windows, so nobody in the hallway could see in. 2 other inmates, Bracamonte and Verdugo, were positioned to watch the yard. Every roll was filled before anyone threw a punch. When it was done, the crew carried the body down the hall and into shower stall number 1. They tore a strip from a standard-issue orange prison uniform, wrapped it around Caleros' neck, and left him face down on the wet floor. The first officer to find him filed it as a suspected suicide. That gave Montaño and his crew exactly the window they needed to clean up, align their stories, and wait. 4 days later, Montaño walked into the prison cafeteria and started talking, not whispering, talking. He told a group of inmates, in front of witnesses, that Caleros had been held down and choked out by 2 people, while a third did the strangling. He didn't name anyone specifically, he wasn't stupid, but he made clear that someone in cell 2A18 was next on the list. One inmate heard every word. He had watched the whole thing happen. He had 3 months left on his sentence, 90 days from walking out the front gate, and he still refused to give investigators a single statement. He said he was worried about his family on the outside, 90 days from freedom. Still wouldn't talk. Investigators questioned everyone in Housing Unit 2A and 2B. They got nothing, not because nobody saw anything, but because everyone understood exactly what talking would cost them. Between 2015 and 2017, Montaño picked up 4 more disciplinary violations: assault on an inmate, 2 separate fighting charges, and 1 count of threatening. He was already serving 2 life sentences when he added all of those. The write-ups went into his file. His file went nowhere. In prison, Raymond Montaño had no future to protect and nothing left to threaten him with. That made him the most useful kind of person to the people running things, and the most dangerous kind of neighbor to everyone else. Number 3. Gerard Greyhound Schultz. On November 16, 1981, inside Farmer's Liquor Store in Phoenix, Arizona, a man walked in and killed someone he already knew. The victim's name was Fred Gonzalez. The killer was Gerard Gregory Schultz. He got 2 life sentences, the second one consecutive, meaning it starts only after the first one ends, which, mathematically, means never. Gerard Gregory Schultz had a son. Same name. Around the year 2000, when the son was about 23 years old, he caught a murder charge. Same city, same type of crime, different generation, identical outcome. He got life without parole. That detail. Father and son, same city, same crime, 20 years apart. is either a coincidence or it's the most honest thing the Arizona criminal justice system ever accidentally documented. Junior went into the Arizona Department of Corrections and made enough of an impression that in 2008, the state transferred him to Illinois under the Interstate Corrections Compact. That's not a routine move. That's what happens when a prison system decides your presence is a problem it cannot solve locally. They didn't upgrade his security level. They moved him to a different state entirely. Illinois put him in TAM Supermax. His cell measured 4 feet 8 inches wide and 10 feet 8 inches long, smaller than a standard parking spot. No natural light. 2 showers a week. 9 hours of outdoor recreation per week, though attorneys who visited regularly said the actual time was usually much less. At one point, TAMS was so overcrowded that they doubled up solitary cells, 2 men sharing a space designed for one. Schultz spent 8 months that way at Menard. He and his cellmate had to write out a daily schedule just to decide whose turn it was to stand up. TAMS closed in January 2013. He moved to Pontiac Correctional Center and stayed in isolation there too. In 2015, he published an essay called Voices from Solitary Phantom Souls. He wrote that waiting for a letter gave him overwhelming anxiety because receiving one was the only moment he felt like a person again. He described 2 million prisoners as people the country had simply decided to stop seeing. He also wrote that the guards were the most dangerous gang operating inside the prison. Not a metaphor. He meant it literally, that in many cases when an inmate got attacked, a guard had a hand in setting it up. His wife Leon gave up her life in California, moved to Illinois, and found an apartment 6 blocks from Pontiac. She said her entire existence revolved around him and the conditions he was kept in. 6 blocks. That's how close you have to live to visit a man the system has decided no longer needs to exist. His nickname was Greyhound, a dog bred for one thing, running something down until it stops moving. The state of Arizona decided it was easier to move him 1,000 miles away than to find out what he might do next. That probably tells you everything. Number 2. Luis Coño Cisneros. On July 3rd, 2003, federal prosecutors in Phoenix, Arizona, filed a sealed indictment against a man they had already tried to indict once before, in New Mexico. They didn't move the case because of paperwork. They moved it because staying in Santa Fe had become genuinely dangerous. Court employees were leaking security plans directly to the defense. The lead detective, a Phoenix police veteran named Mike Maya, had an active murder contract on his head. The judge was sitting behind bulletproof glass. Federal prosecutors had started carrying guns to work every morning, so the United States Department of Justice packed up an entire death penalty case and relocated it to another state. First time in American legal history that it ever happened, because a gang made them. The man behind all of it was Luis Cisneros, known as Coño, running out of Mesa, Arizona. His organization dealt methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and stolen cars across the Phoenix metro area. He was also a central figure in the Arizona Mexican Mafia, a prison gang operating inside the state's correctional system since the 1970s. What the organization was genuinely known for, though, was what happened to witnesses. On January 12, 2000, in Lovington, New Mexico, a former prison guard named Jose Moreno Sr. was murdered. The organization suspected him of talking to federal investigators. 6 months later, his son, Jose Moreno Jr., was killed too. During plea negotiations, Cisneros admitted he had been planning to kill a third Moreno, the remaining son, to finish what he started. In 2003, a 17-year-old girl was stabbed to death. She had just left the Federal Witness Protection Program. Angel Rivera, a member of the network who was already serving a life sentence for a separate murder, ordered the hit from inside his prison cell. Someone on the outside carried it out. The government's most protected category of witness was not, in fact, protected. Prosecutors connected the organization to at least 8 witness killings in total. One informant, a former New Mexican Mafia member named Jack Sepulveda, was so terrified of retaliation that he committed an armed robbery while out on bail, deliberately, so he could go back to prison and avoid testifying. He told investigators he would rather serve time for robbery than stand up in court against Cisneros. That detail alone tells you more about the organization's reach than any wiretap transcript could. The case finally collapsed from the inside. Armando Alvarado, one of Cisneros' co-defendants, pulled out of their joint defense agreement and testified for the government. He described conversations that took place at night in their shared jail pod in New Mexico, with no lawyers present, planning, coordinating, keeping the organization running from behind bars. In 2007, Luis Cisneros pleaded guilty to 3 RICO murders and received a life sentence. He is currently in federal custody. The government got their conviction. It just required moving to a different state, bulletproof glass, armed prosecutors, and one person finally deciding the deal wasn't worth it. And yet, number 1 never needed any of that. No murder contracts, no relocated trials, just 2 corrupted lawyers, a courtroom drug delivery, and 17 years of finding gaps in every system built to hold him. Until the last one. Number 1. Jesse "Silk" Alejandro. On September 25, 2009, inside a Maricopa County courtroom, a defense attorney named David DaCosta was arrested for smuggling heroin and methamphetamine to his own client. The client was Jesse Frank Alejandro. The drugs were in the building. The judge was in the room. Jesse had earned the nickname Silk somewhere along the way. People who move smooth, leave no friction, no fingerprints. Even when everyone in the room knew what he did, nobody could pin it on him. The name fits. His criminal history started well before the courthouse incident. Maricopa County convicted him of first-degree murder and armed robbery. First-degree murder requires premeditation. It means you planned it. Jesse planned things. Those charges alone were enough to put him away for the rest of his life. But Jesse didn't stop working just because he lost his freedom. By 2008, he was inside 4th Avenue Jail's Special Management Unit, Level 4. His cell sat next to John Farinas, a confirmed Arizona Mexican Mafia lieutenant, and 2 other validated members. Guards raided the block in August 2008 and found letters discussing gang operations, with personal items from one cell turning up inside another. Solitary confinement. Letters still moved. Attorney Jason Keller visited John Farinas 5 times between January and September 2008. He was supposed to be providing legal counsel. Instead, he left each visit carrying something extra, or brought something in. Cell phones, drugs. When investigators caught up to Keller, he pleaded guilty and received up to 12.5 years. Jesse needed a new attorney. David DaCosta, 42, took the case. What DaCosta agreed to do is documented in the court record. Jesse's 19-year-old girlfriend, Emily Keene, was used as leverage to secure DaCosta's cooperation in running contraband. On September 18, 2009, DaCosta walked into a Maricopa County court appearance carrying heroin and methamphetamine intended for his client. He was arrested 7 days later. Emily Keene was arrested the same day. 2 people's lives came apart because Jesse needed a drug delivery arranged inside a courthouse with a sitting judge 20 feet away. That's not desperation. That's contempt. Jesse kept fighting the legal system from inside Iman. He filed a post-conviction petition in 2017 under Rule 32.1. Denied. He filed a federal habeas corpus petition in 2019. Denied. He ran through every legal channel available to him over 17 years. Every single one failed. On April 16, 2025, Jesse Frank Alejandro died at ASPC Iman. The Arizona Department of Corrections announced the same day that the Office of the Inspector General had opened an investigation into the nature of the death. They only use that phrase when the cause isn't natural. Jesse spent his entire adult life locating cracks in every system built to contain him. Jails, courtrooms, law offices, solitary units. He found those cracks every time. He corrupted 2 lawyers. He ran gang operations from a cell the size of a bathroom. He always kept finding the gap. He just couldn't find one in Amon. 10 names. 10 men who thought the rules didn't apply to them. One died in the same prison he ruled. One corrupted 2 lawyers and still lost every appeal. One ran a drug empire from a cell and never saw a single dollar of it. The system they tried to break outlasted every single one of them. Not a story about power. A story about the cost of choosing wrong and paying for it every single day, inside a box the size of a parking spot for the rest of your life. If you're young and you're watching this, every exit is still open to you. Take one. If this reached you, share it with someone who needs it. Hit like, and if you're on your phone, hit hype. See you in the next one.